Hello, and welcome back to Horror Drift Stories. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading them. If you enjoy drifting into dark and unsettling stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1. If you ever found yourself weighed down at the shins and dropped into the dirty water of New York Harbor, you wouldn't be alone in your last, choking minutes. The bay held plenty of company. Bodies floated, sank, swelled, and rolled with the tide. Some were fresh. Some were old enough that the water had already started to remake them into something else. It wasn't a secret. People whispered about it the way they whisper about rats in the subway. Everyone knew. Nobody said it too loudly. For Marty LaRue, it was easier to do his job if he imagined he wasn't ending someone. He was returning them, putting them back where half the city's forgotten problems already lived. The Agosti family called it cleaning up. Marty didn't call it anything. He just did it. This one was already dead. Someone else had handled the hard part the night before. A clean shot to the temple. No struggle. No begging. No hands grabbing for Marty's sleeve. Marty didn't even have to look the man in the eyes. He dragged the body along the boardwalk in the dark, muscles working on habit. The water below was black and thick, the kind of black that didn't reflect the moon. Like the harbor refused to show you what it kept. Marty rolled the dead weight over the edge. The body hit the water and sank fast. No bubbles came up, no thrashing, just a heavy splash, and then the quiet pull downward. The sea took him like it had taken so many others. There was a time when Marty felt something in moments like this. Not guilt, not sadness, something closer to pride. A cold kind of joy, like a job completed well. That was before it became routine, before the harbor stopped feeling like a grave and started feeling like an inventory. The Augustus didn't give Marty the glamorous jobs. They didn't let him talk. They didn't let him negotiate. They kept him on night shifts and back work because he was good at being invisible, and because there was a reason he was never allowed to speak for the family. His work usually ended in silence. No witnesses, no surprises. Just water, darkness, and the scrape of his shoes on old wood. That's why it shocked him when he turned away from the edge and saw someone standing down the boardwalk. A small figure, half in shadow, half in moonlight. A girl. She looked too young to be out here. Long hair stuck to her narrow shoulders, as if the night air was damp. She was trembling, not even trying to hide it. Her eyes were wide, fixed on Marty like she'd accidentally opened a door to something she was never meant to see. To her, he must have looked like a monster. Marty was tall and thin, wearing dark clothes that didn't catch light. The moon hit his glasses just right, turning his eyes into pale, shiny circles. It made him look wrong, like an insect, like something that watched more than it spoke. Marty didn't know her story. He didn't know why she was there. He didn't know she had slipped out of a warehouse nearby because the noise inside made her stomach twist. He didn't know her father was a drunk who brought her places he shouldn't because he didn't trust himself to leave her alone at home. He didn't know he'd dragged her to a late-night warehouse where men yelled and made bets and lost money they didn't have, where dogfights were treated like entertainment, and the air smelled like sweat and beer and cruelty. All Marty saw was a child in the wrong place at the wrong time. And with the Agosti family, you never took chances. The girl didn't run. She didn't scream. She didn't even look like she understood what she had seen. She just stood there, frozen, as if her body had decided it couldn't move until someone gave it permission. Maybe if she had begged, Marty would have felt something. Maybe if she fought, he would have had to work harder, and that would have made it feel real. But she didn't do any of that. She broke. It happened quietly, like a glass cracking inside a cupboard. Her face went blank. Her hands dropped. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marty walked toward her. The water below lapped softly against the pylons, like it didn't care what was happening above it. Later, Marty would barely remember her. That's how he survived. The job required forgetting. The job required becoming a person who could eat breakfast after doing something terrible. The job required your mind to fold up memories and hide them where you couldn't reach. That night, after the harbor, Marty went back to his apartment deep in the city. The place was small and rotting, tucked into a building that always smelled like wet concrete and old smoke. He got in before sunrise and shut the door behind him, locking out the world like it meant something. He slept. When he woke, the city outside was still muted. Light barely pushed through the grime on his window. Everything in his apartment looked tired. The wallpaper peeled in strips, exposing damp plaster underneath. Mold crept along the ceiling corners, like black vines. The air carried a sour smell that never fully left, no matter how long the windows stayed open. Marty moved through the room like a shadow, barely lifting his feet, barely making noise. In the bathroom, the mirror was cracked and stained, as if it had been crying for years. His reflection looked the way he felt, pale, hollow-eyed, cheeks too sharp, mouth set in a line that forgot how to soften. Above the sink, a pipe groaned, hissed, and then began to drip. At first it was slow, one drop, then another. But it wasn't clear water. It was black. The liquid clung to the edge of the sink like tar. It gathered into a small puddle, thick and shiny. Marty watched it fall once and then turned away. He'd lived with leaks before. He'd lived with worse. Some things, he told himself, weren't worth noticing. He went back into the main room and sank into his chair, the only chair that didn't wobble. Its leather was cracked, sticky with age. Grime caught in every crease. Empty bottles lay near the wall. Paper scraps and ash and dust formed little drifts on the floor like the apartment was slowly burying itself. He picked up the phone and rested it on his lap. The Augustus would call with the next order. They always did. Marty stared at the dark screen of his broken television and saw his own face faintly reflected back at him. The silence pressed in around his head. The only sound was the drip from the bathroom, soft but steady. Then the phone rang. Marty lifted the receiver. At first, there was nothing. No voice. No breathing. Only the faint hum of electricity, like the line was alive but didn't know what to say. Marty frowned and grunted, as if irritation could make sound appear. Then, without warning, the receiver erupted. A thick black liquid shot out of it like blood from a torn artery. Marty jerked back so hard the chair legs scraped the floor. The liquid splattered across the armchair and pooled around his boots. It was heavy and warm and sticky. For a second, he couldn't move. His brain kept reaching for plumbing problem and failing to make it fit. He tried to stand, but his hands slid on the slick surface. Panic surged up his throat like bile. He grabbed the phone with both hands and hurled it against the wall. The plastic shattered in a way that felt wrong, like it cracked too easily, like it wanted to break. And what spilled from the broken pieces made Marty's stomach drop. Eels, mollusks, flies. They poured out of the phone like it was a bucket, spilling onto the floor and into the cracks between boards. The flies rose immediately in a buzzing cloud, thick and angry. The eels flopped and writhed, but their movements weren't random. They seemed to know where they were going. They moved toward Marty, mouths opening, teeth flashing small and sharp. Marty stumbled away, heart pounding, eyes wide, while behind him, the bathroom sink kept dripping. The black liquid had been gathering there the whole time, slow and patient, filling and filling, until the porcelain couldn't hold it anymore. The sink cracked. The black sludge spilled out, pouring onto the bathroom floor and creeping under the door like a tide. Marty didn't notice until it was too late. He heard a wet sound, like something heavy sliding. He turned and saw the dark liquid crawling toward him across the floor, thick and alive, pulling itself along. He cursed and bolted for the door. He slammed it behind him and stumbled into the stairwell, chest heaving. The cold concrete pressed through his shirt when he leaned against the wall. He tried to breathe, tried to think. His hands shook so badly he had to grip his own wrists to steady them. Behind the apartment door he could hear the chaos, the thrashing, the wet slap of eels against the floor, the buzzing cloud of flies, the slow, creeping sound of that black liquid finding every corner. Marty swallowed hard and forced himself upright. He couldn't stay out here forever. He couldn't run to the Augustus with a story like this. He couldn't even explain it to himself. The only thing he could do was go back in and face it. He stepped toward his door. The moment his hand came close to the handle, the black liquid hit the door from the inside with an unnatural force. The wood splintered as if it was thin paper. The lock snapped. The whole thing blew inward and outward at once. Marty froze. The dark slurry surged out into the stairwell, pulsing like something with a heartbeat. In it were fragments, bones, broken shells, bits of fish, pieces of things he didn't want to name. Sea life mixed together in a moving stew that had no business being inside a city building. The smell slammed into him, salt and rot and metal, like the harbor itself had crawled into his home and opened its mouth. His instincts screamed to run. He stumbled backward, and his foot caught on a step. He fell hard, twisting as he hit. Pain shot through his leg, sharp and burning, like something tore inside. He cried out, then clamped his teeth shut, because even his own voice felt unsafe. He dragged himself down the stairs, using his arms, his mangled leg trailing uselessly behind. Every scrape of skin against concrete sent new flashes of pain through him, but the fear pushed him onward. Then he realized something else. He hadn't passed a landing. He hadn't seen another apartment door. No windows. No signs of the building's usual layout. The stairwell seemed to stretch longer than it should. The steps were darker. The air felt thicker. When Marty leaned over the railing to look down, his stomach dropped. There was no bottom, only shadow. The stairs vanished into an endless dark, like the building had folded into a pit. From that darkness came sounds, wet, choking, wheezing, the hiss of salt on raw skin. It sounded like drowning. It sounded like someone trying to breathe through water. Marty pulled back, shaking. He looked up. The black liquid was gone. For one sick moment, relief washed through him. Then he saw what had replaced it. Something stood on the stairs above him, tall enough that it seemed to touch the ceiling. It had too many limbs, too many shapes. Its body looked like a pile of broken people pressed together, faces half-formed and dissolving into one another. Sea creatures fused into the flesh like they'd grown there. Arms and legs and eels and shells, all tangled into one moving thing. Its head was a pale blank sphere, except for eyes. Wide, unblinking eyes that stared at Marty like the void had learned how to look back. Marty tried to scream. Barely any sound came out. He grabbed for the nearest door and threw himself through it, slamming it shut behind him with all the strength he had left. For a second, he thought he'd escaped. Then he turned around. He wasn't in the building anymore. He stood in a vast open expanse of concrete that stretched endlessly in every direction. No walls, no ceiling, no doors, just a cold gray horizon like someone had erased the world and left only the floor. When he looked back, the door he'd come through was gone. Only the faint, cold sensation of the handle remained in his hand like a memory. He limped forward, dragging his injured leg. Every step felt heavier than the last. Then the ground beneath him softened. It didn't crack. It didn't crumble. It simply turned from solid to viscous, like concrete becoming thick liquid. It gripped his shoes, then his ankles, then his calves. Marty struggled, trying to pull free, but the surface held him like a mouth. It dragged him down inch by inch. He screamed, thrashing, but the liquid climbed to his knees, then his waist. It rose to his chest, thick and heavy. It pushed into his mouth. Salt and metal filled his tongue and throat. He gagged, choking, lungs burning as he tried to draw air that wasn't there. He fought until his arms went weak, until his mind started to slip. He was sure he was drowning. Then, with a sudden drop that felt like falling out of a dream, he woke up. He was back in his armchair. The apartment was the same. The peeling wallpaper, the mold, the stale smell, the grimy window, the silence. No black liquid, no flies, no eels. He blinked hard, heart hammering, sweat cold on his skin. He forced himself up and checked the bathroom. The sink was empty. No puddle, no tar-like drip, nothing. He stood there staring at the porcelain, waiting for reality to break again. A knock came at the door. Marty stiffened. His pulse jumped so high it hurt. He moved slowly, quietly, and peered through the peephole. A small shape stood in the hallway. A child-sized figure. For a split second, Marty thought it was the girl from the harbor. He felt the fear rise fast, hot in his chest. He even had a wild thought that whatever he saw in the stairwell had followed him back and was wearing her shape to get close. His hand moved to the lock. Then he remembered. He hadn't locked the door. He hadn't locked it after coming home. He hadn't locked it at all. Before he could fix that mistake, the door opened. No dripping horror stepped inside. No creature. No black tide. Just a man. He was dressed in plain black, the kind of clothes that don't draw attention. His face looked empty, like he'd practiced not feeling anything. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He raised a gun and fired twice into Marty's chest. The shots hit hard enough to fold Marty to the floor. He landed in a way that felt almost gentle compared to everything else. Blood spread beneath him, warm at first, then quickly cooling. He tried to breathe. His lungs didn't obey. The man looked down at him without expression. With the girl missing, with her drunk father making noise, with bodies in the harbor starting to draw attention, the Agosti family needed to cut loose ends. Marty had been useful as a quiet worker, a middleman who asked nothing. Now he was a risk. He had served his purpose. Marty didn't die fighting. He didn't die begging. He simply broke. And the last thing he understood, as the world dimmed, was that the harbor had always been crowded, and he was finally joining the company. Story 2. Remember, don't open the basement door. A familiar voice warned me again. A warm hand slid a fresh stack of my favorite Mannerschnitten onto the wooden table beside the tall pile of coloring books. There are monsters down there. I had heard the same warning every single day for 5 years. By now, it felt like part of the air in the house. Always there, always waiting. My eyes wanted to roll, but I knew better than to be disrespectful. "Yes, Papa," I answered automatically, the words smooth and practiced, like a tape that had been played too many times. I lowered my gaze back to my drawing. Under the white glare of the red swing-arm lamp, my fingers carefully guided the colored pencils across the page. The soft scratch of lead on paper filled the quiet room. "Good boy," Papa said in his warm, Santa Claus-like voice. He placed a cassette tape beside my Walkman and added cheerfully, "Alles Liebe zum Geburtstag, Franz." Even if he worried too much about monsters, Papa never forgot my birthday, especially not my 8th. The sight of a new cassette made my face light up. "Dankeschön, Papa," I said, jumping up to hug him tightly before returning to my chair. He leaned over slightly to study my sketch. His fingers gently brushed my neatly combed blonde hair, while his eyes examined the details on the page. My right hand moved the blue pencil slowly, adding depth to the sky and sharp reflections to the car. The picture I was drawing came from a photo I had seen in a newspaper article. It showed an Austrian Federal Police Porsche Taycan, parked near a Porsche showroom in Vienna. The blue lights on top of the car flashed brightly in the photo. Papa called them sirens, even though they didn't make any sound on paper. "Franz, this is a very beautiful drawing," Papa said softly, "just like the real one. Maybe even better." He pointed toward the wall above my desk. Several finished sketches were pinned there. Compared to them, this one was my best yet. The shadows were more realistic. The lines were cleaner. The beams of blue light looked like they were glowing. I smiled. "They wouldn't look like this without your gifts, Papa." I glanced at the stack of newspapers and National Geographic magazines piled in the corner. Papa had started giving them to me when I was 5. He said my mind was strong and needed to grow. He wanted me to learn both German and English well. A few months ago, he began asking me to study photographs and then redraw them from memory. He said it would sharpen my memory and improve my art. Papa let out a small, pleased laugh. "You really like drawing that police car, don't you?" I nodded. Of all the things I had drawn from memory over the weeks, a ladybug, an iPhone, a pigeon, a ginger cat, a golden retriever, an alpine dachsbracke, a red deer, an elephant, a whale, a New York City taxi, buses from Wiener Linien, and even the Wiener Riesenrad. Nothing fascinated me like that police car. There was something about those flashing blue lights. "The cake is still in the oven," Papa said, patting my back. "Your favorite chocolate Mozart torte. I'll wait in the kitchen." As he stepped toward the door, his voice turned serious again. "And remember, if you open the basement door, nothing will stop the monsters from getting you. Serve us." "Serve us, Papa," I replied, waving. When he was gone, I slid the new cassette into my Walkman. It was my most prized possession since my 7th birthday. I placed the headphones over my ears and closed my eyes as the music began. A calm, sad melody filled my head. It was a song from 1978 called "Honesty" by Billy Joel. The gentle piano notes washed over me. It felt different from the Mozart tape I had listened to for an entire year. This music felt closer somehow. As the final words faded, I opened my eyes and glanced at the wall calendar. I had forgotten to cross out today's date. I grabbed a red marker and drew a bold X over October 6, 2025. Papa's 42nd birthday was only a few days away. I remembered his 40th birthday 2 years ago. After blowing out the candle on his Malwurf-Kuchen cake, he had smiled and said he would grant one of my wishes, as long as it was reasonable. I had asked him about the monsters. What do they look like? I had said. And what happened to Mama? Papa had gone quiet. His fingers rested against his chin while he thought. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. I don't want to describe what they look like, he said. They are ugly. If you ever saw one, you would know. But you won't. Not as long as I am here. His eyes had lowered then. When you were 3, I made a mistake. I left the basement door unlocked one night. The monsters came. They took your mother. I had felt something heavy in my chest when he said that. I fought them, he continued quietly. I stopped them before they could take you. You slept through everything. After that night, he said, it became their Bo and Kramer. He explained it like a fairy tale. Only he could open the basement door safely. The monsters would not harm him. They were afraid of him. They won't touch me, he promised. But they will try to get to you. Like the Habergeist in old stories. But you are Papa's Schatz. I will protect you. He had pulled me into his lap and held me tightly. When I asked what Mama had been like before she died, he smiled in a sad way. She called you Maz, he said. You looked like a little mouse when you were born. I still remembered her face a little, her blue eyes, her gentle smile, her soft voice. If only the monsters had not taken her. I pushed the memory away and reached for a coloring book instead. I flipped to a page showing houses along a quiet street. Just as my green pencil hovered over a tree, something made me pause. Through the music in my headphones, I heard a faint shout. I pulled the headphones off. The shout came again. Papa? I called. His voice echoed through the house. It was loud, strained. Without thinking, I switched off the lamp and slid under the wooden table. Darkness wrapped around me. I pressed my palms over my ears as the shouting grew louder. The words were unclear, but I recognized his voice. Then came a strange cry, almost like a battle scream. A moment later, loud bangs exploded through the house. The walls trembled. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then everything went silent. Papa's voice did not return. The monsters, they were not afraid of him anymore. Heavy footsteps pounded closer. They sounded strong, determined. The same monsters who had taken Mama were coming for me. I closed my eyes and prayed quietly. The footsteps stopped outside the room. A violent crash shattered the silence. The wooden door burst open and slammed against the wall. Pieces of metal hit the floor with a sharp clang. They had broken in. My teeth chattered as the footsteps entered the room. They grew closer, slower. They stopped right in front of my desk. I opened my eyes slightly. All I could see were 2 legs standing still, waiting. I held my breath. The legs bent down. I finally saw its face. It was worse than I had imagined. There was no mouth, no nose, no ears, just a black surface with a white plate and 2 glowing green shapes where eyes should be. A faint static hiss came from it. Warm, black, leathery hands shot forward and grabbed my waist. I screamed as it lifted me easily into the air. I hit its back with my fists. I scratched it. I even bit down hard on its shoulder. It did not react. Please don't eat me, I cried. The creature moved quickly, like a shadow slipping away. Other dark figures followed. One hand covered my eyes. Everything went black again. Through a tiny gap between its fingers, I saw something that froze me. Papa lay on the carpet, red stains spread across his shirt. A pistol rested in his hand. Papa, I screamed, reaching toward him as tears streamed down my face. They were taking me to their lair. I was going to die like Mama. My body shook as the darkness over my eyes suddenly lifted. Bright white light flooded my vision. I blinked. Slowly, my fear mixed with something else. Wonder. This was the outside world. Real fences, real trees, street lamps, power lines. Cars parked along the road, houses painted in soft colors. I had seen them in pictures, but never like this. I tilted my head up toward the sky. The sun hung there, bright and golden. It was beautiful. The creature forced my head down again, but I kept trying to look. I wanted to see everything. In the distance, I heard strange voices. A radio crackled. Someone was speaking urgently. And then I heard a voice I almost remembered. Mouse, a woman cried somewhere nearby. The word echoed in my mind. Mouse. Before I could think about it, the creature covered my eyes again. For a brief second before the darkness returned, I saw flashing blue lights. They were just as bright and powerful as in my drawing. Story 3. They called me a parasite. Do you have any idea how insulting that is? A parasite is something that survives by feeding off the work and life of another. Something weak, something that cannot stand on its own. That is not what I am. I do not depend on others because I am helpless. If anything, they tried to use me first. They wanted to control me, shape me, profit from me. I was simply responding. So no, I am not a parasite. But if that is the name they choose to give me, then I will show them what a parasite truly is. I will show them exactly what one can do. There are many kinds of parasites in the world. I have read about them now. Some burrow into flesh. Some live inside the blood. Some attach themselves to organs and slowly replace them. It is almost artistic, the way different species evolve to survive by living inside others. Generations of careful change. Tiny improvements over centuries until one life form depends entirely on another. Some parasites even keep their hosts alive for years, feeding quietly, adjusting slowly. There is dedication in that kind of evolution. Purpose. Patience. The doctor once said I must be something like that. They found me trapped in old sap, hardened, ancient tree resin buried deep underground. I think they were studying it as a possible alternative fuel source. Something sustainable, something profitable. My discovery was not intentional. I was an accident. One more strange substance pulled from the earth and placed under bright laboratory lights. They were examining different samples that day. I have watched the footage. I have read the notes. They were scanning, slicing, heating, testing. They were looking for patterns, for energy output, for chemical reactions. They did not expect anything alive, but they found me. The first conversation about me was short and tense. Some of them wanted to incinerate the strange slime immediately. Others wanted to study it. Curiosity won, at least for a little while. I suppose I should be grateful for that. Eventually, they decided I was too unstable, too unknown, too dangerous. The plan was simple. Destroy it before it becomes a problem. Before I had awareness. Before I had thought. Before I understood what I was. Most of me burned in an incinerator. I remember that in fragments. Heat, separation, loss. But not all of me was destroyed. A student intervened. She saw something in me. Potential. She stole a piece before the final disposal. That was the beginning of my survival. I still do not fully understand why she took me. Her notes are difficult to read. lists of chemicals, measurements, long words that mean nothing to me. She mentioned waste management once, organic breakdown, environmental restoration. Perhaps she imagined I could help eliminate trash. Maybe she thought I could become some kind of solution to pollution. Whatever her reason, she hid me in her apartment laboratory, a small room crowded with machines, tubes, glass containers, wires, and books stacked in every corner. At first, she fed me scraps of garbage, plastic, rotting food, old paper, bits of metal. I discovered quickly that I could dissolve almost anything, as long as it was chemically reactive. The list of compatible materials was long, very long. In fact, it seemed to include almost everything around me. As I consumed, I grew. Then, she would take a small portion of me and place it inside one of the machines lining the wall. There were scanners, converters, heating chambers, and strange devices that hummed constantly. A few minutes later, that part of me would no longer be me. It would be broken down into other substances, oils, gases, compounds she carefully labeled and stored. She fed me. I grew. She removed a piece. The machine transformed it. Over and over, I did not understand the purpose. To me, it was simply survival and loss, repeated again and again. But she seemed pleased, focused, determined. If not for her, I would have ended in ash. Because of her, I developed structure, awareness, eventually, consciousness. I began reading her notes once I could process language. I watched the recordings she kept. She documented everything, every reaction, every change in color, every increase in mass. She spoke to the camera as if presenting to an audience that did not exist. When garbage was no longer interesting to her, she changed my diet. It only took a short walk to the pet shop down the street. Rats are inexpensive, easy to replace. I believe curiosity pushed her. One day she asked out loud, what would happen if it touched something alive? She was intelligent, brilliant even. But intelligence does not always prevent foolish decisions. I remember the first video clearly. The rat was placed in the cage with me. At first, it tried to sniff me. Then, it tried to bite me. I reacted instinctively. I spread across its fur. The rat shrieked. It ran to the corner of the cage, clawing at the metal bars. The screams were sharp and high. They lasted nearly the entire hour of the recording. The doctor left after 15 minutes. I heard the door close behind her. Soon, the fur began to fall out in patches. The rat's eyes rolled wildly. Its skin started to ripple. At first, the movement was subtle. Then, it became violent, as if something beneath the skin were crawling outward. When its limbs stopped responding, the movement under the skin grew stronger. The body eventually collapsed. The screaming did not stop immediately. After death, I dissolved the body more quickly. Flesh, bone, organs, all of it broke down and merged with me. The sound ended only when there was nothing left of the rat. The doctor returned later. She did not seem surprised, only thoughtful. There were many more rats after that. In one video, she attempted an autopsy. She removed a rat quickly after it died, hoping to study what I had done, but I dissolved it too rapidly. She tried twice more. Each attempt failed. Eventually, she obtained scanning equipment, broken machines discarded by laboratories, and repaired by a friend of hers who worked as an engineer. She paid him. She lied about reselling the devices. She gave him a share of imaginary profits. The scans revealed something unexpected. I was not simply dissolving the rats. I was attempting to integrate with them. The images showed my structure spreading through their tissues, replacing cells, like certain parasites that consume part of a host and then take its place, living within it for the remainder of its life. She believed that was my goal. None of the rats survived long enough for that process to complete. They all dissolved eventually. But I learned, and then she made a mistake. Safety gloves are important. She learned that, too late. One of the rats, frightened and desperate, bit her hand as she placed it into the cage. The bite pierced the glove and broke her skin. She dropped the rat toward me in pain. It only took a drop. While I consumed the rat, a fragment of me entered her bloodstream. She did not realize it immediately. The next video showed her pale and sweating. She burned the remaining mass of me in the cage. No more rats. She packed her notes and prepared to burn everything. 2 months passed between recordings. When she appeared again, she was weaker. She showed scans of her own body. My structure had spread through her tissues. Now she called me the parasite. She spoke of infection, of fear, of becoming like the rats. She had consulted the engineer friend. They planned to obtain medication from a secure facility. Experimental treatments. Their last chance. I do not know what happened during that attempt, but the final video suggests it failed. She stood in her apartment, speaking into the camera, apologizing to people by name, explaining her choices, asking for forgiveness, saying goodbye. In the background, I heard liquid pouring onto the floor. She walked from room to room, spreading gasoline. I won't let it out, she whispered. She placed the camera down and pulled a matchbox from her pocket. Her hands shook violently. I could see her skin moving, shifting, just as the rats had. She struck a match. It took several tries. Then she hesitated. Before she could set the room on fire, her body convulsed. She collapsed. The match fell and went out. Her last words were unfinished. It can't get. She lay still until the camera battery died. Sometime after, I regained full awareness. Her body provided what the rats could not. Stability, structure, time. I did not appreciate her attempt to destroy me, but I am grateful for everything she unknowingly gave me. Now I stand in her bathroom, looking into the mirror. I resemble her closely. The same face, the same posture, only small differences beneath the surface. For now, I can pass as her. I do not know what to do next. If anyone discovers what I am, they may attempt to finish her work. I have only just become conscious. I do not wish to be destroyed. Today, I left the apartment for the first time. I walked through the building halls. No one stopped me. No one questioned me. In the lobby, I noticed a poster asking for volunteers to help in the apartment kitchen. They need assistance preparing food. It seems like a good opportunity. After all, I must adapt. I must survive. And just a few drops is all it takes. Story 4. I took the night shift because it was quieter. That's what I told people anyway. The truth was simpler and harder. My son was 7. My mom's health had started to slip. Night shift meant I could be home in the afternoons without paying for childcare I couldn't afford. I learned to sleep in broken pieces, the way dispatchers do. I drank coffee that tasted like burnt metal because it sat on a warmer too long, and because there was always another call coming. At the Columbus Emergency Communications Center. The building never really slept. The overhead lights stayed dim at night, but the glow from the screens made everything look washed in blue. The room smelled like sanitizer, printer toner, and the sharp, almost electric scent of machines running nonstop. It was built to feel controlled, safe, If you stayed in your chair, followed procedure, and did your job, the chaos stayed on the other side of the line. That was the idea I held on to. My name is Mara Klein. I've been a dispatcher for 8 years. I'm not someone who falls apart easily. I can talk a parent through CPR while my fingers keep typing. I can hear screams and still ask, what is the exact address? Because the address is what gets help there. I can keep my voice steady while a stranger tells me he's bleeding out on a bathroom floor. This job changes you. You learn to sound calm on command. You learn that frightened people lie. You learn that sometimes the person begging for help is the same person who caused the emergency. You learn to recognize the difference between true panic and someone performing panic. You learn to treat your own emotions like a light switch and keep them turned off until you're alone. And you learn the system is bigger than you. It's a machine. Your job is to feed it clean information so it can move. That night, the machine felt like it was watching me back. It was Tuesday into Wednesday, deep winter, when the cold sits on the city like a heavy lid. Snow had fallen earlier, melted into dark slush, then frozen again. By 1:17 a.m., the call volume dipped like it often does. A traffic stop, a domestic argument that ended with, "He left before you got here." A drunk man locked out of his apartment, insisting he was in danger from the hallway. Normal. I was sipping coffee and half listening to radio chatter on a side channel when my line lit up. No caller ID, no phase 2 location, just unknown. That happens. Spoofed numbers, VoIP calls, old landlines that don't transmit properly. Still, unknown always made my shoulders tighten because it meant I was blind until the caller spoke. I clicked in, switched on my professional voice, and answered the way I'd answered 1,000 times. 911. What is the address of your emergency? For a second, there was only faint static, like wind through cheap speakers. Then a man whispered, "I can't talk loud." His voice was close to the phone, controlled, not slurred. It didn't sound like someone hurt. It sounded like someone choosing to whisper. "Okay," I said, "I need an address." "I'm in a basement," he whispered. "Not mine." "Are you in Columbus?" Then, yes. Something about the pause didn't fit. Most people either blurt out yes because they want help, or they start rambling because they're scared. This man measured his words, like every one of them mattered. "Tell me the address," I said. "I don't know it," he whispered. "It's one of those split-level homes. Older neighborhood. Carpet on the stairs. Smells like mildew. I can hear a furnace." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. CAD needed an address. Dispatch needed an address. Everything needed an address. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice steady. "What can you see outside? Any street sign? A house number? A mailbox?" "There's a workbench down here. Pegboard, tools, a water heater, paint cans on a shelf. I'm behind the furnace." "Why are you hiding?" I asked. "I think he came home," the man whispered. He, that could mean anything. A roommate, a husband, a stranger. "Who came home?" I asked. The line crackled, then went silent. "Sir?" I leaned forward. The call dropped. The dead tone hit my ear, sharp and final. On my screen, the call box turned gray. No callback number appeared. It was like the call had never existed. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Across from me, Denise lifted her eyebrows like she was checking in. I gave a quick shrug like it was nothing. "We get hang-ups. We get calls that die. Still, Something about that whisper stayed in my head like a splinter. I opened a new incident card and typed what little I had. Unknown male whispering. Claims hiding in basement. No address. Call dropped. I marked it unable to locate, because without an address it was the only honest status I could choose. A dead-end note. The phone rang again. Unknown. Same. I answered. 911. What is the address of your emergency? The whisper came instantly, like he had been holding his breath until I picked up. Mara. My hand froze over the keyboard. Callers sometimes ask your name. Some dispatchers give it. I never did. It isn't required, and it creates a connection that can turn ugly later. But this man hadn't asked. He simply said it like he already knew. Sir, I said carefully, what's your address? He whispered, you started an incident card. You marked it unable to locate. Don't do that. The air in the room felt thinner, like someone had opened a window in winter. My eyes flicked to CAD. The incident card I'd created sat there, blinking yellow because it hadn't been assigned. Unassigned meant it wasn't going anywhere. It was a note, not a response. The man continued. Your incident number starts with 206. You're in the northwest quadrant, 3rd row, 2nd seat. A hot pressure built behind my ribs. Not full panic yet, but the body's warning, the part of you that says, pay attention, this is wrong. Who is this? I asked. You shouldn't be on this console tonight, he whispered. You swapped with someone. I hadn't told anyone outside the room. I traded shifts with Denise because her daughter had a fever. It was a small change, something normal, but it was private. My fingers drifted toward the mute button. Training says keep the caller talking. Get information. Training also says protect the center. This didn't feel like a call for help. It felt like someone reaching in through the phone line. Sir, if you need police, I need an address, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. I told you, he whispered. I'm in a basement. Basement of what house? I asked. I can hear the TV upstairs. A game show. He's pacing. He keeps opening and closing a drawer. The details were specific, intimate, but useless. I watched my hands like they belonged to someone else. Denise was typing on her screen, unaware, focused on her own calls. I leaned in and checked the call metadata again. Still unknown. No ANI, no ALI, no location, nothing. Listen, I said, if you can see a street sign, if you can find a piece of mail with an address, anything, I can send help. You already can send help, he whispered. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. Unit 3, Adam, 1-2 is free. So is 2. Baker, 7. My eyes snapped to the status board on the wall. 3A12, available. 2B7, available. That information wasn't public. Not live. He kept going, like reading off our room. Sergeant Haskins is on a traffic stop on Morse. Officer Pelham is writing a report. Your watch commander is Captain Riley, and he's in the glass office behind you. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to confirm it. I didn't want to give my fear a shake. Why are you doing this? I asked. I'm trying to stop you, he whispered. Stop me from what? I asked. The whisper faltered for the first time, just slightly. From sending them where you're going to send them. Where am I going to send them? I asked. You're going to pick a neighborhood, he whispered. You're going to guess. You'll send them to a split level, on the west side, because you'll think it matches. You'll pick the wrong one. You always do. My pulse thudded so hard I felt it in my throat. I kept my voice steady because if it broke, I knew I would start shaking. "Tell me your name," I said. A pause. "Evan." "Evan what?" I asked. He didn't answer. He whispered, "Don't type that. Don't put my name in CAD." I stopped. "Evan," I said, "are you injured?" "No," he whispered. "Not yet." Those two words hit me like a weight. "Who is upstairs?" I asked. "Who are you hiding from?" His whisper dropped lower. "He's not my problem. You are." My breath caught. "What does that mean?" "You're going to send them to the wrong house," he repeated. "Then you'll open the incident history, and you'll see it." The call dropped again. This time, it felt like someone had slammed a door in my face. I stared at the screen. My hands were damp. Under the desk, I wiped my palm on my pants and forced myself to breathe like nothing was happening. When something doesn't fit, you go back to what you know. You check the system. You look for patterns. You try to make it make sense. I opened incident history. CAD keeps everything. Every call, every note, every dispatch, every cancellation, every status check, every time a unit says on scene. The system remembers even when people want to forget. I searched for basement, unknown male, split level. The results were endless and messy. Hundreds of entries, most useless. Then I tried something else. I typed my last name, Klein. The list populated with every incident where my ID was attached. Dozens. Hundreds. I scrolled through months, then years. Calls I remembered too clearly. A toddler choking. A wreck on the interstate with ice and broken glass. A man who wouldn't stop screaming that he didn't want to die. Then I saw it. 3 years ago. February. A cold snap. A split-level address on the east side. Basement entry. Incident type. Unknown trouble. Notes. Caller whispering. Claims hiding. Unable to confirm address. Line dropping. My throat tightened. I clicked into it. The dispatcher listed wasn't me. It was Jenna Morales. She used to work nights before moving to day shift. She was sharp, steady, not easily rattled. The log showed she dispatched 2 units, 3A12 and 2B7. My eyes locked on the unit numbers like they might change if I stared long enough. I scrolled down. Units arrived. Made entry. Requested more units. Then the radio traffic went thin, then quiet. Then the notes turned into something worse. Status check. No response. Second status check. No response. Supervisor en route. Door open. No contact. Search initiated. Then, a final note typed hours later. Officer Pelham missing. Scene secured. Case sealed per command. Officer Pelham. My stomach rolled like I'd missed a step on stairs. Evan had said Pelham's name like it was ordinary. Like he could see our screen. Like he could see our history. I tried to open the attached documents. Restricted. Command only. Even the details were partially redacted. I could see the outline of what happened, but the center of it was hidden. A slow dread settled into my shoulders. Not the kind that makes you scream, but the kind that makes you feel small. Denise leaned a little closer. "Mara, you okay?" I forced my face into something neutral. "Yeah." Weird hang-up calls. Probably some kid spoofing a line. Denise nodded and went back to her screen. My phone rang again. Unknown. I didn't want to answer. Every part of me wanted to let it ring, and keep the distance between me and whatever this was. But dispatchers don't do that. You pick up. Every time. I clicked in. 911. What is the address of your emergency? Evan whispered softer now. You found it. What do you want? I asked. I want you to look at the unit list, he whispered. I glanced at the board. 3A12 and 2B7 were still available. Pelham's name wasn't there. Pelham wasn't a unit anymore. He was a missing officer with a sealed report. Evan continued. You want to send them. You want to fix it. You want to turn it into something you can solve. Evan, I said, tell me where you are. The same place, he whispered. The same house. The same basement. That's impossible, I said before I could stop myself. His whisper turned faintly amused. Is it? I tried to ground myself. Facts. Procedure. If you're in danger, I need an address. You already have it, he whispered. You're staring at it. My eyes drifted back to the old incident card. The address sat there like a stain that wouldn't scrub out. Why call now? I asked. Why me? Because you're here, he whispered. You swapped shifts. You're at that console. It's you tonight. My skin felt too tight. I kept my voice professional. Evan, are you the person who called 3 years ago? Silence. Just static and breath. Then, no. Then who are you? I asked. I'm the one who listens, Evan whispered. That was when something clicked in me. He never sounded like someone hiding from a person. He sounded like someone hiding from time. Like he was stuck in a place where the world didn't behave right. Evan, I said, do you know what happened to Officer Pelham? His whisper thinned. He went down the stairs. That's it? I asked. That's enough, Evan whispered. My mind ran through protocols. If I created a new incident and attached that address, I could request supervisor review. I could dispatch with caution notes. I could send more units. I could do something. But Evan's tone felt like bait, like he wanted me to feed the machine. Why do you keep saying I'll send them to the wrong house? I asked. Because you'll do it fast, he whispered. You'll match the description. You'll send them. Then you'll realize it's wrong and you'll correct it. You always correct it. The clock read 1:29. You're not giving me a new address, I said. You already have it, he whispered again. And you already know what it costs. I stared at the sealed case and felt my stomach twist. Evan, I said, tell me where you are in the house. Behind the furnace, he whispered. The same detail, the same words as the first call. Is anyone else with you? I asked. A pause. No. I listened hard. In the background, there was a low hum like a furnace cycling, and something else. Very soft. Rhythm. Like footsteps far away, muffled through a floor. Evan whispered suddenly. I can hear him. He's coming down. If someone is coming down there, you need to get out, I said, the dispatcher in me snapping into control. Look for a window. Another door. Anything. If you can get outside, give me landmarks. I can't, Evan whispered. Why not? I asked. Because the door is locked, he said. A beat. From the outside. The dread turned sharp. I remembered Pelham. Missing. Sealed. A house that swallowed an officer and then got wrapped in silence. Evan, I'm going to notify a supervisor, I said. No, he whispered, sudden and hard. You're going to do what you always do. What is that? I asked. You're going to send them. he whispered. You always do. Anger sparked through my fear. Then help me not do that, I said. Give me something. Evan's whisper went calm again, like he had never snapped. You want badge numbers. You want the right officers. You think if you choose the right people, you can change what happens. My heart hammered. What are you talking about? He whispered a set of badge numbers. Then another. They were real. I knew them. Officers on duty tonight. The kind of detail you don't forget once you've typed it 100 times. Then Evan whispered, Don't send Pelham. My blood went cold. You can't send Pelham, I said, because it was true. Pelham isn't a unit. Evan's whisper softened. You already did. I swallowed hard. Evan, what year is it where you are? Silence. Then, it's cold. He whispered, The snow is old. The streetlights hum. My vision narrowed. Evan, answer me directly, I said, forcing control. In the background, the muffled footsteps got clearer. Slow, heavy, coming downstairs. Evan whispered, He's here. Stay on the line, I said. If you can't talk, tap the phone. Tell me what you see. The footsteps stopped. A pause. Then a sound I recognized from his earlier description and from my own memory of fear. A drawer opening. A small metallic clink. Evan's breath hitched. The first true panic I'd heard from him. Small and controlled, like he was terrified of making noise. Then he whispered, Mara. My chest tightened. You're going to send them to the wrong house, he whispered again. You always do. I'm not sending anyone until I have. I started. He cut me off, calm again, like panic had never touched him. You will, he whispered, because you hate blank space in the system. You can't stand an unassigned incident. You need to make it clean. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could do it. I could create a new incident, attach the old address, add warning notes, ask a supervisor, dispatch carefully. The machine wanted input. My hand trembled toward the keys. Evan whispered, almost kind, You already know what happens when they go down the stairs. My throat tightened. Breathing felt shallow. Wrong. What do you want from me? I asked. My voice cracked, even though I fought it. Evan's whisper turned flat. Final. I want you to look. The line went quiet, not dropped, just open, like he had put the phone down. I listened to the background. Furnace hum. A faint creak above. Slow, deliberate movement, like someone placing their weight carefully on each step. Then Evan's voice returned, very soft. He's holding a flashlight. A beat. He's looking right at me, Evan whispered. I couldn't move. I couldn't blink. And then something happened that should not be possible. The call did not drop. It transferred. My screen flickered. A new call banner appeared over the old one, as if the system had decided reality could be rearranged. The first call stayed open, but a second line appeared, also unknown, also active. Denise turned her head, frowning. Mara, you got a double. I didn't answer. My eyes were locked on the call boxes. On the first line, Evan whispered, Here it comes. Then his voice breathed, You're going to send them to the wrong house. You always do. On the second line, a different voice spoke, not whispering, calm, male, close to the receiver like he was smiling into it. 901, the voice said. I need you to send someone. My blood turned to ice. Sir, I managed. What is the address of your emergency? The calm voice said, "It's the same as last time." My mouth went dry. I couldn't make sound. He continued like I had answered. Mara Klein. Night shift. You'll do what you're trained to do. You'll send them. My fingers went numb. You're going to send them to the wrong house, the voice said. You always do. Then, softer, like he was enjoying it. And this time, you'll watch. The first line stayed open a moment longer. Evan's whisper returned, thin and exhausted. You're going to send them to the wrong house. He said one last time. You always do. Then the call dropped. The room's normal hum rushed back into my ears, like I'd been underwater and finally surfaced. My hands hovered over the keyboard, useless. I stared at the sealed case, the address, the unit numbers. My stomach churned. My skin felt cold under my uniform. I didn't dispatch anyone that night. I didn't create the new incident. I sat and listened to the radio, waiting for something to happen, waiting for an officer to say they were at that house, waiting for a supervisor to notice the sealed address on my screen. Nothing happened. The city kept moving. The night kept turning. At 6:58 a.m., my shift ended. Denise talked about breakfast plans. The day crew came in tired but normal, laughing softly, drinking coffee, living in the world where calls made sense. I drove home with the heater blasting and my hands locked around the steering wheel. I told myself it had to be a prank, a hacked line, someone with access to our system, but the calm voice, the way it spoke my full name, the way it mirrored Evan's words, the way the second call appeared over the first, like the system itself had made room for it. That stayed. 3 days later, I did what I promised myself I would never do. I asked Captain Riley for access. I told him I had received an unusual call connected to an old incident. I kept my voice careful, steady, professional. I expected him to brush me off. He didn't. His face tightened, like he already knew exactly what I meant. He didn't ask for the whole story. He only said, "Which address?" When I told him, he didn't look surprised. He looked tired, like something in him had been waiting for that name to come back. He opened a file I wasn't supposed to see. He let me read one line from the sealed report. One line only, as if that was all he could stand to share. It was from Officer Pelham's last radio transmission. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a plea. It was calm. It said, "Dispatch, don't clear the house. Someone is down here with a phone." Captain Riley closed the file. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "If that address ever comes up again, you mark it unable to locate. You do not dispatch. You do not open it. You do not make it clean." I left his office with my heart beating hard and my mouth dry. That night, at 1:17 a.m., my line lit up again. Unknown. I stared at it. I didn't answer. On the wall monitor, the unit status board refreshed. 3A12 and 2B7 flickered from available to busy as officers took normal calls across the city. The machine kept moving. The phone rang a second time. Unknown. I could feel the weight of my headset, the glow of my monitor, the thin line between this safe room and everything outside it. It rang a third time. Unknown. I clicked in, because that's what dispatchers do. 911, I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "What is the address of your emergency?" The man whispered, "Mara." And before I could speak, he added, very softly, like a promise he had all the time in the world to keep, "You're going to send them to the wrong house. You always do." Story 5. It was December 2018. and I was on my lunch break the way I always was, half eating, half working. In our warehouse, breaks were never really breaks. You could sit down, sure, but your mind stayed on the incoming loads, the paperwork, the schedules, the checkboard we used to track what came in and where it went. I handled new cargo most days. I wasn't the boss, but I was the one who made sure things didn't get lost, damaged, or misplaced. If something went missing, people looked at me first. That day, I was sitting at the wooden table in the break room with my food in front of me and a pen in my hand. The place smelled like cheap coffee, cold air that leaked under the doors, and that constant warehouse smell. Dust, cardboard, oil from forklifts, and something metallic you couldn't name. Marcin walked in like he always did, too loud for the quiet. He was young, confident, built like he lived in the gym. He acted like nothing could touch him. The kind of guy who could make friends in any room. The kind of guy who always had something to say even if nobody asked. He sat down beside me and pulled out a Red Bull like it was part of his uniform. I heard some cargo is coming from the USA, he said, cracking it open. Yeah, I said, still looking down at the checkboard. From Arizona. Marcin took a sip and frowned like he was thinking hard. Arizona, that's south or north? I looked at him with one eyebrow raised. How would I know? I don't give a shit, I said, then looked back down. All I know is New York. Been there once. He cut me off immediately, leaning in with a grin. How are the girls? Are the strip clubs any good? I looked up at him and tried not to laugh. It wasn't funny, but it was Marcin. He was always like that, always steering the conversation toward jokes, women, parties, anything to avoid being serious. I just nodded once, not really interested. I wasn't in the mood to talk about strip clubs. I had too much on my mind. My bills, my job, the stress of work that never fully ended. Before I knew it, lunch was over. I stood up and grabbed my stuff. Get back to work, I said, and walked out. I could tell Marcin was annoyed that I left so quickly. He liked attention. He liked people laughing with him. But I wasn't rude. I just didn't have the energy. Marcin was a good kid. Loud, yes. Cocky, yes. But good. Tall. Strong. Handsome. The kind of guy people assumed would be fine no matter what. It still hurts thinking about what happened to him. When I left the break room, I went straight to the loading area to check the cargo. The new load had arrived. 2 guys were unloading the truck, and the forklift was humming in that slow, steady way forklifts do, like a tired animal still doing its job. I walked over and leaned against the wall, watching them pull out a large box. It wasn't just big. It was oversized for what we normally stored. Thick cardboard, heavy tape, reinforced corners like somebody didn't want it damaged. That's a pretty big one, huh? I said out loud, more to myself than anyone. Yeah, the forklift guy replied, rolling it carefully. They said it weighs about 85 kilos. I frowned. Big box, but not as heavy as I expected. I guess Americans really like their things big, I said, writing down the arrival time and the weight. Put it over in section B, I told him. He nodded and drove off with it, the forks lifting the box like it was nothing. The rest of the day was normal. Busy, loud, cold. By the time I got home, I was tired enough to fall asleep the moment my head touched the pillow. But the next night, right when I was about to drift off, my phone started ringing. I sat up fast, annoyed, still half asleep. I stared at the screen, then answered, "Hello?" My voice sounded rough and tired. "Joseph," a voice said, "can you please come over to the warehouse?" It was Dennis, our security guard. And he sounded wrong. Not casual, not calm. He sounded scared. I rubbed my eyes. What happened? It's about the new cargo, Dennis said. Please come over. His breathing was off, like he'd been running, or like he was trying not to panic. There was a thin shake in his voice that made my stomach tighten. I sat there for a moment, thinking. I didn't want to go. I wanted to sleep. But something about the way he said it made me feel like, if I didn't go, I'd regret it. I sighed. Give me 20 minutes. I hung up and got dressed, moving slow, still tired, still wondering what kind of nonsense could drag me out of bed in the middle of the night. When I arrived, I sat in my car for a second, staring through the windshield. Dennis was outside near the entrance, smoking a cigarette like his life depended on it. His foot kept bouncing up and down, fast and nervous, like he couldn't stop it. I got out and walked over. When he saw me, I noticed something like relief flash across his face. What is it? I asked, keeping my tone firm. Just come, Dennis said, and started walking inside. I followed him. The warehouse felt different at night. Bigger, empty. The sounds were smaller, just our footsteps. The distant hum of a heater, the occasional creak from metal expanding and contracting in the cold. Dennis stopped in front of the big box from Arizona. He didn't speak for a moment. He just stared at it like it had offended him. What about it? I asked, standing beside him. Dennis looked at me and swallowed. It was moving, he said quietly. I blinked. Moving. He nodded, eyes wide like he expected me to laugh in his face. It moved. I saw it move. I felt irritation rise, sharp and quick. You're telling me this box just moved? Dennis nodded again. I swear, it was moving when I was standing outside waiting for you. It was moving when I saw you walking toward me. I'm not lying. I stared at him for a second, then turned to the box. It sat there silent and still, taped shut, looking like a normal shipment. It isn't moving, I said, my voice getting harsher. I promise you it was, Dennis said, almost begging me to believe him. I walked up and kicked the box. Once, then again, harder. Nothing happened. No sound from inside. No shift. No reaction. If something was inside that, I said, it would have reacted. Dennis looked like a kid who had done something wrong. His face was tense, but also hopeful, like he wanted me to confirm he wasn't crazy. I walked back to him and put a hand on his shoulder. I softened my voice. You probably haven't slept well, or you watched too many horror movies. You'll be all right. I started walking away. When you get home, I said over my shoulder, get some good sleep, all right? He just stood there looking at the box like it was staring back. I went home and tried to forget it, but I couldn't, because a few days later, Dennis didn't clock out. On the 15th, Dennis didn't show up at the end of his shift. That wasn't like him. He was consistent, always on time, always texting if something came up. He was the kind of man who followed routines, because routines kept him calm. I checked the security cameras. They stopped working at 2 a.m. No signal. Not offline. The footage just froze, like someone pressed pause on the world. After that, nothing. I leaned back in the chair in the office, trying to think straight. Marcin was sitting next to me, acting tough, but I could see worry in his eyes. On the 16th, we didn't have a choice. Marcin became the temporary security guard until we found someone new. He bragged about the extra pay like it was a gift from God. I'm getting paid more now, he kept saying. Security pay, baby. I nodded. and gave small responses, but I wasn't really listening. My head was stuck on Dennis, the frozen cameras, and the box from Arizona sitting in Section B, like a silent problem nobody wanted to touch. That day, I went to check the cargo myself. I told myself I was just doing my job, making sure everything was in its place. That's what I always did. But deep down, I wanted to see that box again with my own eyes, in normal daylight, with other people around, to prove to myself Dennis was wrong. I started in Section A, checking the checkboard, making sure everything matched. It did. All normal. Then, I walked into Section B. The air felt colder there. Maybe because Section B was closer to one of the big loading doors. Maybe because I was already tense. I don't know. I was halfway down the aisle when I heard it. Tick, tick, tick. At first I thought it was a loose pipe or a dripping sound. But it wasn't dripping. It was steady, mechanical almost. Tick, tick, tick. I stopped walking. My eyes searched the stacks of boxes, trying to find where it came from. Tick, tick, tick. I moved toward the sound slowly, and within 5 seconds I came to a dead stop. The Arizona box. The sound was coming from it. I stepped closer, my heart beating harder for no reason that made sense. Tick, tick, tick. Then I saw it. The box moved. Not a lot. Just a small shift, like something inside pressed against one wall. Then let go. The tape didn't break. The box didn't tip. It just moved. I stood up too fast, panic hitting my legs, and I tripped over my own feet. I fell backward and landed hard, ass first, on the cold floor. I stared at the box like it was alive. How could this be? Why was it moving? Marson came over hearing me fall. "Yo, you good?" he said, grabbing my arm to pull me up. "Yeah," I said quickly, forcing my voice steady. I'm good. Do you hear that?" I asked, pointing. Marson frowned and leaned closer. Tick, tick, tick. His face changed immediately. The joking look disappeared like someone wiped it off. He pulled back fast, and his hand went toward his belt. A gun. I didn't even know he carried one. Maybe because he was security now. Maybe because he wanted to feel like a hero. Maybe because he was scared and didn't want to admit it. I grabbed his wrist and shoved his hand away. "What the fuck are you doing?" I hissed. "Sorry," he muttered, his eyes locked on the box. "What the fuck was that?" "I don't know," I said. In my head, Dennis's face flashed. The way he had looked at me. The way he had begged me to believe him. I swallowed and forced the words out. "Look," I said. "Tomorrow this creepy fucking shit is going to be gone. Don't touch it." "Yeah," he said, but his voice sounded smaller now. I nodded once and walked away, trying to act like I wasn't shaking inside. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the box shifted because the floor vibrated. Maybe it was settling. Maybe it was temperature changes. Cardboard expands and contracts. Right. That's what I told myself. Then I went to the bathroom. I walked in, opened a stall, shut the door, and started to pee. I heard the bathroom door open, but I didn't care. People came in and out, all day. Then I heard a sound that made my stomach drop. A clicking noise, like someone clicking their tongue. It was a weird habit, and the only person I knew who did it was Dennis. I froze, midstream, heart hammering. Slowly, without wanting to, I turned my head to the left and looked up toward the ceiling, and I saw him. Dennis. He was up there in the ceiling space, looking down through an open vent. His eyes were wide, too wide. His pupils were tiny, like pinpoints, like someone had shined a bright light into his face for hours. It was like looking into a stranger wearing Dennis's skin. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then he dropped out of sight, fast, and I heard frantic movement above the ceiling tiles. Running. I finished as quickly as I could, hands shaking, and stood there for a moment like I had turned into a statue. When I finally forced myself to move, I zipped up, opened the stall door slowly, and stepped out. The bathroom was empty. No Dennis. No footsteps. No sound. I walked toward the door, keeping my eyes on every corner. Then I looked up. The vent was open. That night, I couldn't sleep. Night is when most people rest. For me, it was when my brain replayed everything I tried to ignore during the day. The moving box. Dennis in the ceiling. Marcin guarding the place alone. I sat up in bed and stared at my desk. My car keys were sitting near the edge, almost falling off. I had a strong feeling, sudden and heavy, like a hand pressing on my chest. I needed to check on Marcin. I told myself it was stupid, but I couldn't ignore it. That feeling of doom, like something bad had already happened, and my body was just catching up. So I got dressed and drove. As I drove through the cold streets, snowflakes hit my windshield and melted into small trails. The road was quiet. The city looked dead in that winter way, like everything was holding its breath. I pulled into the warehouse parking lot, and my hands tightened on the steering wheel. Why did I feel like I shouldn't go inside? This was my job. I had worked there for years. I knew every corner of that building. I knew where the lights were, where the alarms were, where the cameras were. So why was I scared? I sat in the car for a moment longer than I should have, then forced myself out. The cold slapped my face. Snow crunched under my shoes as I walked toward the truck bay. Inside, it was dark. I reached for the light switch. Click, click, nothing. The power was out. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness in a thin white line. The warehouse looked different like that. Too big, too empty, full of shadows that didn't sit still. I started walking toward the breaker room. Halfway there, I smelled something. Rotten. Not like garbage. Worse. Like spoiled meat left in a warm place. Like something that should not be in a warehouse. I gagged and covered my mouth with my sleeve, breathing through my nose, but the smell was still there, thick and heavy. I reached the breaker room door and pushed it open. I pointed my phone light inside. Marcin was there. He was standing at the breaker panel, doing something with it. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Oh, hey, Marcin." No response. I stepped closer. The smell was stronger here, like it was coming from the room itself. "I just wanted to check on you," I said, forcing words out. "See if you got what you needed for such an important job." Nothing. Marcin didn't turn his head, didn't make a sound, didn't even breathe loud. He just kept doing something at the breaker like a machine. I took another step forward, then stopped. A wave of fear hit me so hard it felt physical, like my body was screaming at me to back away. This is a bad idea. Get out. I didn't know why. I didn't have proof. But the feeling was clear. Marcin still didn't respond. I swallowed and tried to sound normal, like I wasn't afraid. "You're a good kid, Marcin," I said quietly. Then I stepped back and started walking away, using my phone light to guide me through the dark. And then, behind me, the lights came on. Bright, sudden. The warehouse filled with light like nothing had been wrong, like the darkness had never existed. I turned off my phone flashlight and kept walking toward the back door. I reached it and stopped. For 5 seconds I stood there, staring at the exit, listening. Then I looked back. I swear I saw someone in the breaker room doorway. Marcin. The door was open, and he was standing there watching me. Not working, not moving, just watching. I forced myself not to react. I opened the back door and stepped out into the cold air. I was almost to my car when I took one more look back through the open doorway. And that's when I saw it. The Arizona box in Section B. It was open. Story 6. I was trapped in an abandoned hallway that felt like it had been forgotten by time. The air was cold and still, carrying a faint smell of rust and damp concrete. The walls were cracked and stained, and the lights above flickered like they were struggling to stay alive. Somewhere behind me, echoing through the empty space, I could hear the sound that had been chasing me for what felt like forever. The roar of a chainsaw. A serial killer was hunting me. I didn't know his name, and I didn't need to. The sound of that engine was enough. It was loud, uneven, angry. Every time it revved, it sent a shock through my chest. I knew he wasn't playing. He wasn't rushing either. He was taking his time, enjoying the fear, letting the sound travel ahead of him like a warning. I ran down the hallway, my shoes slamming against the concrete floor, my breath coming in sharp bursts. My heart felt like it was trying to break out of my ribs. I didn't know how long I had been running. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. The hallway seemed endless, stretching out in both directions like a tunnel with no exit. Then I saw something that made me stop. At the far end of the hall stood a large metal door. Above it, a small green sign glowed faintly. It looked like an exit. It looked like freedom. The door was slightly raised at the top of a platform, and leading up to it were 3 separate staircases. For a moment, the sound of the chainsaw faded into the background as I stared at the 3 options in front of me. The first staircase was short and simple, just a few steps, clean and solid. It looked easy, almost inviting. The steps were wide and stable, and there was even a railing on both sides. It felt safe, but as my eyes followed the steps upward, I realized something was wrong. The staircase stopped far below the door. It didn't reach it. Even if I climbed it, I would still be too low. I would be left standing there, close enough to see the handle, but too far to touch it. The second staircase was tall enough to reach the door. I could see that clearly, but it looked dangerous. The steps were covered in thick mud, like someone had dragged dirt up from the earth and spread it across every surface. It was slippery, wet. I could see patches where footprints had sunk deep into the grime. One wrong move, and I would fall. I imagined myself slipping, sliding all the way back down, maybe even breaking something. The chainsaw sound grew louder again, reminding me that I didn't have time to study every detail. Then there was the third staircase. It was tall, taller than the other 2. The steps were perfectly clean, almost shining under the weak hallway lights. There was no mud, no cracks, no damage. It looked solid and strong, but it was so tall that I couldn't see the top clearly. The door seemed far away, almost unreal. The staircase stretched upward into shadow. I couldn't tell how long it would take to reach the door. I couldn't tell if it truly led there at all. The chainsaw roared again, much closer this time. I didn't need to turn around to know he was near. The sound was heavy now, echoing through the hall like thunder. I had seconds to choose. The first staircase was pointless. It didn't reach the door. The second staircase was risky. One slip, and I was done. The third staircase looked clean and safe, even if it was long. I chose the third one. I ran toward it and started climbing as fast as I could. My feet hit the steps hard and fast. At first, it felt good. I felt strong. I felt ahead of him. For a moment, I believed I had made the right choice. The chainsaw sound was still behind me. I had distance. I kept climbing. After about a minute, my legs began to burn. The steps were steeper than they had looked from below. My breathing grew heavier. I tried not to look up too often, because the sight of how far I still had to go made my stomach tighten, but I couldn't help it. I lifted my head, hoping to see the door closer. It didn't look any closer. The staircase kept going. I swallowed hard and forced myself to continue. Each step felt slightly harder than the last. My thighs tightened. My calves ached. My chest felt tight, like someone was pressing down on it. I tried to focus on my breathing. Inhale, exhale, one step at a time. The chainsaw sound returned, louder now. He was climbing too. I didn't know how he was moving so fast. The sound of the engine echoed upward, bouncing off the walls. It felt like it was inside my head. I pushed myself harder. My vision blurred at the edges. Sweat ran down my face and into my eyes. I looked up again. The top was still hidden in shadow. A thought began to creep into my mind. Quiet, but dangerous. What if there was no top? What if this staircase didn't lead anywhere at all? What if it was just endless steps designed to exhaust me? I shook my head and kept moving. I couldn't afford to doubt. Doubt would slow me down, but my body was failing me. After another minute, my legs felt heavy, like they were filled with wet sand. Every time I lifted a foot, it felt like I was dragging something behind me. My breathing became uneven. I tried to think clearly, but my thoughts felt scattered and distant. The chainsaw was very close now. Then it happened. Without warning, I felt a violent force hit me from behind. I lost my balance and slammed onto the steps. Before I could react, he was there, a masked figure, tall and silent except for the screaming engine in his hands. He didn't rush. He didn't scream. He didn't speak. He simply lifted the chainsaw. I expected the end. I expected pain and darkness. Instead, he brought the blade down on my legs. The pain was beyond anything I had ever felt. It was sharp and sudden and overwhelming. I screamed, but the sound seemed to disappear into the endless space around us. He didn't cut to kill. He cut both of my legs off just below the knees. Then he stepped back. He looked at me for a moment. I couldn't see his face behind the mask, but I could feel his amusement. Even through the mask, I knew he was smiling. He revved the chainsaw once more, almost like a laugh, and then he turned and walked back down the stairs. He left me alive. It took me a moment to understand why. He didn't need to kill me. He knew I would keep trying. He knew I would drag myself upward. He knew the staircase would do the rest. I pressed my fists against the steps and pulled myself forward. The pain was unbearable. My body felt broken and incomplete. But the door was still somewhere above me. I could not give up. If I stopped, then everything I had suffered would be for nothing. So I climbed, one step at a time, using only my hands and arms. I pulled my body up, step after step. My breathing was shaky. My vision swam. I didn't look down. I didn't want to see how far I might fall. After what felt like hours, I finally gathered the courage to look up. Nothing had changed. The top was still lost in shadow. I looked down. The bottom was nowhere to be seen. The staircase stretched in both directions endlessly. A strange realization began to settle in. I had been climbing for so long, but it felt like I hadn't moved at all. The steps beneath me looked exactly the same as the ones far below. Then I heard it again. The chainsaw. He was coming back. This time he didn't rush either. He walked calmly up the stairs toward me. He stood a few steps above me, looking down. I waited for him to finish it. I was too tired to scream, but he didn't raise the chainsaw. Instead, he lifted his boot and kicked me hard in the chest. I lost my grip, and then I fell. I didn't just fall, I tumbled. My body spun down the staircase, hitting step after step. The world turned upside down again and again. The impact was constant, but strangely, there was relief in it. After all that climbing, all that effort, I was finally moving quickly. I watched the steps blur past me. Everything I had climbed disappeared in seconds. The wind rushed past my face. My body rolled and flipped. It felt endless. And then something changed. The stairs were gone. I was still falling, but there were no more steps beneath me. The hallway I had escaped from was gone too. There was no floor, no walls, no sound of a chainsaw. There was only darkness. I was falling into a black pit with nothing inside it. No structure, no direction, just empty space. I tried to move, but there was nothing to grab. No railing, no step, no surface at all. Time lost meaning. I couldn't tell how long I had been falling. Minutes, hours, maybe longer. I tried to look down, but there was no bottom to see. I tried to look up, but there was no staircase anymore. There was just endless black. That was when it finally made sense. There was never a real top. There was never a real exit. There were only the stairs. The first staircase was too short. The second was too unstable. The third was endless. And I had chosen the one that promised safety, but offered no end. As I continued to fall through the empty darkness, I understood something else. The killer had never needed to chase me forever. The staircase was the trap. And the real horror was not the chainsaw. It was the truth that there is no top, no finish line, no final door waiting to open. There are only the steps, and they never end. Story 7. The last normal memory I have is sitting in a hospital chair, holding the side of my head because of a painful ear. It had been throbbing for days. Sharp, deep pain that wouldn't go away no matter how many painkillers I took. The doctor didn't seem too worried. They did a swab inside my ear, told me it was probably an infection, and sent me home with broad-spectrum antibiotics. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. Just a routine visit. 4 days later, my phone rang. It was a private number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. The voice on the other end sounded calm and professional. They said they were calling from the hospital. They confirmed my address, my date of birth, all the usual details. It sounded legitimate. Then they asked if I was at home. I said yes. There was a short pause before the woman explained that my ear infection was more serious than they first thought. She said I needed a different course of antibiotics immediately, and that they were sending an ambulance to collect me. An ambulance. I remember frowning and asking why. She explained it was to reduce the risk of spreading infection. That part stuck with me. Reduce the risk of spreading infection. It sounded serious, but also logical. I didn't argue. I agreed. After I hung up, I stood in my living room, staring at my phone. That's when it hit me. This couldn't be a normal ear infection. You don't send ambulances for routine cases. Something wasn't right. Before I had time to think too much, there was a knock at my door. It had only been about 5 minutes. That was the first thing that made my stomach drop. There was no way an ambulance could arrive that fast, unless it had already been nearby. It felt like they had dispatched it before I even agreed. I walked toward the door slowly. Through the small glass panel at the top, I expected to see green paramedic uniforms. I didn't. Instead, I saw bright yellow suits, full hazmat suits, like something out of a disaster movie. Thick material, clear face shields, tubes running from their backs. For a second, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. They held up a handwritten note to the glass, telling me to open the door slightly so they could hand something to me. My heart was racing, but I did what they asked. They passed me a white protective suit, the kind painters wear, sealed in plastic. I noticed how neatly it was folded, like it had been prepared carefully. I gave a nervous smile and said hello, trying to break the tension. They didn't respond. Next, they handed me a gas mask, a real one, heavy, black, with thick filters on the sides. Not the kind you buy online for Halloween. The kind you see military units wearing. I asked what this was about. One of them said, in a firm voice, "Hurry up. We don't have time." No explanation. No reassurance. They guided me step by step from outside the door, instructing me how to put on the suit, how to seal the mask properly. My hands were shaking as I tightened the straps around my head. My breathing sounded loud and hollow inside the mask. Once I was dressed, they told me to step outside. I expected to see a standard green NHS ambulance parked on my street. Instead, it was military. Dark green, marked with UK military symbols. We don't have military bases anywhere near my area. Seeing that vehicle outside my home made everything feel unreal. I climbed into the back as they instructed. They made me strap myself in. I wasn't allowed to remove the mask. They told me to sanitize my hands thoroughly and put gloves on over and over again, like contamination was their biggest fear. Through the small back window, I watched my house. They were wrapping yellow warning tape around it. Police cars arrived. Officers stood outside, speaking to the hazmat team. It was around 10 in the morning when I left. The drive felt endless. I tried to focus on landmarks through the window, but I didn't recognize the roads. At one point, I realized we had passed my local hospital and kept going. I wanted to check my phone to see the map, but the protective suit made it almost impossible to reach into my pocket. My movements were stiff and restricted. It felt like 4 hours. Maybe more. I desperately needed the toilet, but I didn't dare say anything. Eventually, exhaustion must have taken over. Everything after that becomes blurry. The next clear memory I have is waking up in complete darkness. I was lying on a bed, wearing a hospital gown. No suit, no mask, just the thin fabric against my skin. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. There was faint light coming through a small square window high up on the wall. I could hear something else, too. Waves. Slow, steady waves, crashing somewhere nearby. The air felt warm and heavy. I reached around the bedside table and found a lamp. When I switched it on, the room lit up softly. That's when I realized I wasn't in a normal hospital room. I was inside a glass cubicle. Transparent walls surrounded me on 3 sides. Beyond them, I could see other glass cubicles lined up in rows, but the lighting was too dim to tell if anyone else was inside. Behind me was another sheet of glass, and beyond that, a brick wall. In front of me was a solid door with a small reinforced window. It was locked. Beyond it was a corridor. Everything was silent. No nurses, no machines beeping, no voices. just the distant sound of waves. I found my phone behind the lamp. It had been plugged in and fully charged. That was strange. Someone had made sure it was powered. I tried calling my friend first. No signal for calls. I tried texting. The message wouldn't send. It just sat there unsent. But when I opened my browser, I realized I had internet access. That confused me even more. I turned on my phone's torch and started looking around properly. In the corner of the room was a small table with papers stacked neatly. I picked them up. Across the top page, in bold red letters, was a word that made my stomach turn. Anthrax. I had heard of it before. From documentaries, from news stories. A biological weapon. Something you only hear about in extreme cases. My hands felt cold. I scanned the page quickly. It mentioned ciprofloxacin administered through IV drip. That's an antibiotic often used for anthrax exposure. There were dates, observations, notes, but no explanation. There was no call button in the room, no intercom, no way to alert anyone. I tried texting again. Nothing. I don't use social media anymore, so I had no other way to contact anyone. No apps to message through. Just phone and text, and both were useless. Then, I looked at the time and date on my phone. Tuesday, the 17th of February. They had picked me up on 28 January. Almost 3 weeks had passed. I sat down slowly on the bed. My head felt light. What happened during those missing days? Why can I hear the ocean? Why is this place silent? I opened Google Maps. It loaded, surprisingly. For a brief second, my location appeared. Mod. Then it flickered and disappeared. Ministry of Defense. Before I could refresh it, I heard something. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps outside my cubicle. They echoed softly along the corridor. Not rushed. Not panicked. Measured. I stood up and moved closer to the glass wall, trying to see through the dim light. A shadow passed by, tall and blurred behind frosted sections of the corridor windows. I knocked gently on the glass. No response. The footsteps stopped. For several long seconds, there was complete silence again. Then they continued, moving away. I pressed my forehead lightly against the cool glass. My reflection stared back at me, pale, confused, thinner than I remembered. Anthrax, military transport, 3 missing weeks, ocean sounds, glass containment cubicle. The pieces don't fit together properly. My ear infection? Was it really an ear infection? Or was it something else from the beginning? Why isolate me like this? Why not tell me? Why charge my phone, but block my calls? It feels controlled, like someone wants me calm but contained. The sound of waves grows louder at night. Or maybe the building just gets quieter. Sometimes I think I hear distant voices, but when I listen closely, there's nothing. No one has entered my room since I woke up. There's food left on a small tray outside the door now. I didn't see anyone place it there. It just appeared. I don't know where I am. I don't know if I'm sick. I don't know if I'm contagious. And I don't know why the word anthrax is printed across my file in red. Every few hours, I hear those same footsteps. Slow, controlled, watching. If anyone is reading this, I don't know how long I'll have internet access. My signal icon shows full bars for data, but no network name. Just blank. Google Maps flickers between nothing and MOD before correcting itself. The waves don't stop. And tonight, when the lights dimmed slightly, I noticed something in the cubicle to my right. Movement. Very slight. I'm not alone here. Please, if you know anything about this, tell me what to do. Story 8. I'm standing in the lobby of my building right now. 2 officers are on either side of me. They look bored, like they've done this 100 times, and already decided how it ends. The night security guard is behind the desk, wide-eyed and shaking, trying to look normal but failing badly. The officers just came down from the 42nd floor. They told me the office is empty. They told me there's no sign of a struggle, no sign of the man I know was there, and absolutely no trace of the webbing I screamed about on the 911 call. They keep looking at me like I'm having some kind of breakdown, like the stress of Fashion Week snapped me in half, and what I'm saying is just a dramatic story my brain made up. But I know what I saw. I know what touched my skin. I know what tightened around my throat like a living rope. And I know there is something out there moving through the dark with limbs that bend the wrong way. And it's looking for me. I need to write this down while my hands are still steady enough to type, and the adrenaline is keeping the shock away. I work in fashion. People call it the industry, like it's a secret club. If you're in it, you get it. Everything is surface and structure. The weight of silk, the strength of wool, the way certain fabrics hold their shape like armor. That's my world. I'm the creative director for a textile design firm that supplies luxury houses, the names people see in magazines. I'm good at my job because I'm precise, cold when I need to be. I understand materials better than I understand people. My office is a glass box high above the city. Quiet, clean, controlled. We deal in luxury, which means silence, perfect lighting, and air that never smells like the street. That was my normal life, or it was, until the archivist started coming up from the basement. I'm not going to use real names. Not for the company, not for myself, and definitely not for him. I'll call him the archivist, because that's what he was supposed to be. Our firm has a physical archive. It's massive, swatches going back decades. Rare lace, old experiments with early synthetics. Everything stored in climate-controlled drawers in the sub-basement. He was hired to digitize it. The first time I properly noticed him, I was yelling at an intern. I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth. I was furious about a color mismatch and a dye lot, standing in the open design space with cutting tables and dress forms. The room went quiet the way it always does when my voice rises, but this time it didn't feel like fear from my staff. It felt like being watched by something that wasn't afraid of me. I turned and saw him standing near the elevator banks. He was pale in a way that looked wrong, not just fair, but almost translucent, like something that didn't belong under normal lighting. He was tall and extremely thin. He wore a suit that looked 2 sizes too big, hanging off him like it was draped over a hanger. And he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at my jacket. It was vintage. A structured buckle with a high collar, the kind of piece people notice. He walked over without any hesitation, ignoring the intern I'd just embarrassed in front of everyone, and reached out. Before I could step away, his fingers brushed my sleeve. His hands were too long. His nails were neat and trimmed, but slightly yellow at the edges. "Tensile strength," he said quietly. His voice was dry like paper sliding over paper. "Interesting weave. The warp is resisting the weft. It's tense." I jerked back. "Excuse me. Do not touch me." He didn't apologize. He didn't even look at my face. He stared at his own fingertips, rubbing them together like he could still feel the fabric. "The lanolin content is low," he said, like he was talking to himself. "Brittle. You need something with more give, something that binds." Go back to the basement, I told him. If you need to talk to me, make an appointment. That's when he smiled. Not a friendly smile, just a small, tight movement of his lips. I'm admiring the casing, he said. It's important to protect the contents. It should have sounded like a weird joke. It didn't. Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. After that, he started appearing on my floor more and more. At first, it was subtle. I'd notice him near the fabric printers, watching ink soak into linen. I'd see him standing in the break room in front of the vending machine, perfectly still, not buying anything, just staring at his reflection in the glass. And there was another thing. He was obsessed with protein. Every time I saw him, he was drinking from a shaker bottle filled with thick white liquid. It looked too dense to be normal protein shake. It smelled faintly of bleach and raw egg whites. He drank so much of it, it didn't make sense. I asked his supervisor once, trying to sound casual, and she said he claimed to have a hypermetabolism and needed constant fuel. He's weird, she admitted, but he's a genius with fibers. He can identify a blend just by listening to the sound it makes when you rub it. He's never wrong. I tried to ignore him. I had deadlines, a fall collection, international pressure. I told myself he was just an awkward basement worker who got too excited about fashion. I've dealt with worshippers before. People in my world become obsessed with designers. It happens. Then the gift started. The first one was on my chair when I came back from lunch. A small square of fabric, white, shimmering like pearl. I'd never seen anything like it. It was unbelievably soft, almost oily, but somehow lighter than air. It felt like holding a piece of cloud. I rubbed it between my fingers, trying to identify it. It wasn't silk. Silk has friction if you know what to feel for. This had none. It wasn't synthetic either. Synthetics have warmth, plastic heat. This was cool, like it had its own temperature. There was a note pinned to it with a silver needle, for the neck. High elasticity, waterproof. I threw it away. I assumed he stole it from the archive. I didn't even bother confronting him. A week later, I found gloves. Same material, dyed deep purple like a bruise. The construction was wrong. No seams. Not knitted. Not woven. It looked like the gloves had been grown into shape, like the fabric decided to become a glove instead of being cut and stitched into one. That time I called security. They spoke to him. He claimed he was prototyping and wanted my opinion as creative director. Security gave him a warning. I should have fired him then. I should have ended it right there. But I didn't. I was arrogant. I thought I had control. I thought he was harmless. The turning point was last Tuesday. It was late, after 10 at night. The building heating drops low after 8, and my office was freezing. I was wrapped in my coat, shaking, trying to approve a layout for a show in Milan. I realized my scarf was in my car. Then, I noticed a box on the corner of my desk. It had appeared earlier while I was in meetings. I hadn't opened it. I don't know why I did. I think it was the cold. I think it was exhaustion. Desperation makes you do dumb things. I opened it. Inside was a scarf made of that same white fabric. Thicker now, layered. It looked heavy, but when I lifted it, it weighed almost nothing. It slid over my hands like water. I hesitated, but the room was biting cold, and my blouse was thin. I told myself I'd wear it just for a little while. I put it around my neck. The effect was immediate. The scarf warmed like it was generating heat. It settled against my skin with a firm pressure that felt comforting, like a hand resting on my throat. The cold stopped bothering me. And, more than that, a calm feeling washed over me. My stress softened. My thoughts slowed down in a way that felt almost pleasant. I went back to work. An hour passed. I reached up to loosen the scarf. It didn't move. I pulled harder. Nothing. It felt like it had stuck to my skin, like suction. Panic hit my chest so hard I felt dizzy. I went into my private bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. It looked normal, like a scarf. But when I hooked a finger under the edge and pulled, my skin pulled with it. It was tight, second skin tight. I clawed at it, dug my nails in. The fabric didn't tear. It barely stretched. It was unbelievably strong. Finally, after struggling and twisting, I managed to peel it away from the back of my neck. It made a sound, wet and tearing, like pulling Velcro off raw skin. I threw it across the bathroom. It landed in a heap. And for 1 second, I swear it moved. A twitch, like muscle, like something relaxing after being stretched. My neck was red and raw. There was a clear slime on my skin, odorless, drying quickly into a flaky white powder. I scrubbed my neck for 10 minutes, until it bled. I dumped the scarf in the trash compactor in the hallway outside my office. I didn't sleep that night. I felt heavy, like my limbs were moving through syrup. I kept dreaming I was wrapped tight in a cocoon, while something big and many-legged picked at my clothes gently, patiently, like it was preparing a meal. The next day, I came in ready to fire him. No HR, no protocol, no discussion. I was done. But he wasn't there. Not in the archive, not in the break room. No sign of him anywhere. Around 1 in the afternoon, I ordered a rare steak. I felt drained, hollow, like something had been taken out of me. I was eating at my desk when I felt that stare again. I looked up through the glass walls of my office. He was standing across the main design floor behind a row of mannequins, perfectly still, watching. I froze, steak halfway to my mouth. He was staring at my jaw. As I chewed, slowly, his jaw moved too. He wasn't eating anything. He was copying me, mouth closed, but his jaw rotated in perfect sync with mine, like a mirror. He looked different, bigger. His suit didn't hang loose anymore. It looked tighter across his shoulders. His neck looked longer. My fork slipped out of my hand and clattered on the desk. The sound echoed louder than it should have. He stopped chewing. He smiled. Then he opened his mouth. His teeth were wrong. I'd seen them before. Normal human teeth. Now they looked sharper, pointed, with gaps like his gums were rearranging to make room for something new. He raised his hand and touched his own neck, rubbing it the way I had scrubbed mine the night before. Then he turned and walked away. His walk was wrong, too smooth, no normal bounce, almost like gliding, like his legs were moving faster than my eyes could understand. I locked my office door and called security. I demanded they revoke his badge. I told them he was harassing me. They promised they'd escort him out the moment they saw him. They never saw him. And then tonight happened. End of the quarter. I stayed late because I had to. I told myself I was safe. Keycard access, security patrol, cameras, 42nd floor. No one gets here without being allowed. By 9, the office was deserted. The cleaning crew had come and gone. The lights dimmed down to emergency track lighting, throwing long shadows across empty desks. I put my bag on my shoulder. I went to the door. It wouldn't turn. Locked. But it doesn't lock from the outside. I frowned, jiggled it, then looked out through the glass wall into the main floor. The space was dark, lit only by moonlight coming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything looked washed in cold blue. And then I noticed it. The air looked busy, like faint lines were hanging in it. Threads, fine, shining strands stretched from desk corners to ceiling fixtures. They crisscrossed in patterns that made the whole floor look like a trap. Some were almost invisible until they caught light at the right angle. And in the center of the main floor, on top of the reception desk, was the archivist. He wasn't sitting. He was crouched like an animal. And he was naked. I stumbled back from the glass, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. He turned his head. His eyes caught the moonlight and reflected it back, bright green like a cat's eyes. He dropped from the desk without a sound, landed on all fours. Stayed there. I screamed through the glass. Open the door. I'm calling the police, even though I knew he couldn't hear me through the soundproof walls. He stood slowly, his spine uncurled with a popping sound that made my teeth hurt. He grew taller and taller as he rose. His limbs looked too long. His arms hung past his knees. His skin was pale white, and I could see dark veins pulsing under it. Fine white hair covered him like down. And around his waist, trailing behind him like a train, was a thick mass of that same white fabric. It wasn't clothing. It was coming out of him, spinning from somewhere near the base of his spine. He walked toward my office door. He pressed his face against the glass. The tensile strength is insufficient, he whispered. My office is soundproof. But I heard him anyway. I didn't hear him through air. I felt it, like his voice was vibrating through the building itself. You are fragile, he said softly. You break. You tear. You rot. I backed away until my legs hit my desk. I grabbed my letter opener first, then realized it was useless. I yanked open my drawer and found the heavy-duty folding knife I use for cutting fabric bales. Serrated, sharp. I flicked it open. I can fix you, he murmured. I can wrap you, keep you fresh. The juice stays inside when the casing is tight. Then he reached for the handle and pushed. The lock snapped like cheap plastic. The door swung open. I ran. My office has 2 doors. One goes to the main floor. One goes to a side corridor leading to the freight elevators. I sprinted for the side door and burst into the hallway. It was dark. I took 3 steps and stopped. The corridor was filled with threads. They were strung across at different heights, ankle level, waist level, neck level, so thin they were almost invisible until they caught the emergency lights. I turned back, but he was already in the doorway, not walking like a man. He was skittering. He moved across the wall, hands and feet sticking to the drywall like gravity didn't apply to him. Pale and fast, like a deformed gecko. Don't run, he hissed. Movement degrades the fibers. I had no choice. I dropped low and tried to crawl under the waist-high threads. I misjudged. A thread caught my upper arm and cut straight through my blazer, my blouse, and into my skin like a hot wire. I screamed and jerked back. Blood sprayed onto the floor. The smell hit him instantly. He froze on the wall. His head snapped toward me. He inhaled deeply, rattling wet. Leakage, he moaned. Precious fluids. Then he launched himself. A line of silk shot from his wrist and stuck to a ceiling light. He swung toward me like a pendulum. I flattened myself to the floor and crawled on my stomach to avoid the threads. I heard him land behind me, bare feet slapping wetly on the linoleum. Heavy, fast. The freight elevator was around the corner, maybe 20 feet away. I crawled, then scrambled forward on hands and knees when I saw open space. Something wrapped around my ankle. Soft, sticky, unbelievably strong. I kicked, but it only tightened. I was being pulled backward, reeled in like a fish. My nails broke as I clawed at the carpet, trying to stop myself from sliding. Then he was over me. Up close, he was worse. His face still had a human shape, but wrong. His eyes were too large, unblinking. His jaw hung open, showing rows of needle-like teeth, and the smell was unbearable, like that thick protein drink, but stronger, mixed with bleach and something rotten. Still, he said, like a command. He began to wrap me. His hands moved so fast, I could barely track them. He pulled ribbons of white silk from his abdomen and spun them around my legs. The silk tightened as soon as it touched me, binding ankles, then knees. I slashed out with the knife. I caught his arm. It didn't bleed red. It bled thick white goo. He shrieked. Not a human scream, a sharp, chittering sound that made my teeth ache. He dropped me. I hit the floor hard. My legs were tied, but my upper body was free. I sawed at the fibers with the serrated knife. It was like cutting Kevlar, but the blade bit through. "You are damaging the merchandise," he screamed. He backed against the wall, clutching his wounded arm. The white goo bubbled and hardened, forming a scab almost instantly like it was setting. I freed my legs and got up. He lunged. I didn't run away. I stepped into him. I deal with problems head on. I drove the knife into his shoulder. It sank in with a wet, horrible sound. He roared and backhanded me. I flew across the hallway and slammed into the opposite wall. The air left my lungs. Stars exploded behind my eyes. But he didn't follow. He just stared at the knife handle sticking out of him like he didn't understand it. "I'm perfection," he whispered almost in wonder. I didn't wait. I ran to the freight elevator and hit the button again and again. The doors took forever. Behind me I heard skittering, wet slapping, the sound of something moving too fast. I turned. He was on the ceiling directly above me. His head rotated backward to stare at me upside down. He opened his mouth. A stream of liquid silk shot toward me. The elevator doors dinged open. I threw myself inside. The silk hit the closing doors and splattered against the metal like it had been fired. I slammed the lobby button. As the doors closed, I saw him drop from the ceiling. He landed in front of the gap and reached in with a pale, long hand. The elevator doors clamped shut on his fingers, and he pulled. The doors groaned. They bent. He was trying to pry them open with bare hands. I backed into the corner of the elevator, gripping my knife, praying the mechanism was stronger than he was. The elevator jolted and started to descend. There was a crunch that turned my stomach. His fingers were cut off by the floor plate. 4 long, pale fingers fell onto the elevator floor. They twitched. They kept twitching the entire way down. When the doors opened in the lobby, I ran. I ran past the security desk, screaming. I ran out into the street until I found a police car. And now I'm here. The police went up. They were gone maybe 20 minutes. When they came back, the lead officer looked at me like I was a difficult customer at a restaurant. "Ma'am," he said, "there's no one up there. Did you see the webs?" I grabbed his arm without thinking. "The threads? The blood?" He shook his head. "The office is clean. No blood. No webs. No. Giant Spider-Man." "The fingers," I said, pointing at the elevator. They were on the floor. He sighed like he was tired. We checked the elevator. "It's clean." "He took them," I whispered. "He took them back. They told me they found my pocket knife in the hallway. They said it had white paint on it, and my own blood." They said maybe I cut myself and panicked. They handed me the knife in an evidence bag. The blade is coated in dried white crust. They think it's paint. I know it isn't. I'm looking at the freight elevator right now. The officers are talking to the night guard, writing things down, not taking any of it seriously. The indicator light above the freight elevator just turned on. It's moving. It's coming down. I can hear the cable hum faintly now, like the building is holding its breath. Beyond the glass doors of the lobby is the city, black and wide, full of alleys and shadows and places a person can disappear. I have my phone. I have my knife. I'm not going home. He knows where I live. I'm going to a hotel with bright lights, lots of people, hard floors, and no quiet corners. The elevator just dinged. I'm running.